everyone! Today we're going to read through the third chapter of Thirsty for Christ, titled, It All Began with a Mission Trip. It is pretty amazing how small the world has become. Not too many years ago, there were only international missionaries, intrepid folks of strong body and soul that spent their lives in faraway places with strange and unknown cultures. We are actually all products of missionaries and owe our message of salvation to their selflessness and willingness to leave everything and everyone they loved to spread the gospel. Starting with the woman at the well, moving on to Paul, the apostles. If it weren't for people of God to have the courage to step out of their comfort zones, there is a distinct likelihood few of us would have the relationship with Christ required to ensure our salvation. In more recent times, God's calling of missionaries has not abated. Many have dedicated their lives and continue to do so, giving up nearly every comfort so that people in the far reaches of the planet could have the godly relationship we all cherish. However, in only the past few decades, a new type of missionary has emerged. The missionary that works all year in every form and fashion of labor in the developed world, only to leave for a bit and experience the blessing of spreading Christ's love in the developing world. No longer is it necessary to give up one's entire life and leave everything. Now it is easy for tradesmen, factory workers, doctors, clerks, students, and just about anyone else to experience serving Christ in the developing world. A national survey in 2006 determined that 2.1% of church members of all denominations, it's about 1.6 million people, have been on a short-term mission trip in the past year. I'm sure in the subsequent years the number has grown even larger. It would be hard to find a Christian church in the developed world today that does not offer what is typically a week-long mission trip somewhere. Through construction, local vacation Bible school, medical work, or any number of useful endeavors, many organizations stand ready to facilitate such a trip with little more than a decision to do it. One would also be hard-pressed to find anyone that had been on one of these short-term mission trips that had not come back home changed by the experience. Let me be as direct as possible here. Every person in the developed world should absolutely do everything possible to take a short-term international mission trip as soon as you can. The remainder of this entire book could discuss nothing but the blessings of participating in such a trip. However, we shall instead continue with the incredible way God used my first short-term mission trip to ultimately bring the gospel, good health, and community development to the at-risk population of an entire country. So, let's just leave this here with the oft-quoted Nike slogan, just do it, and move on. All international mission trips, and particularly ones first, have a life of their own. It usually starts with a greater feeling of anticipation and practical concerns. What will we see? What will the food be like? What should we bring? Will we be able to communicate? And then there are the prayers. I pray I can make some difference. I pray God speaks to me through the experience. I pray I don't get sick from drinking the water or eating the ice. I pray I can get out from under the pile of work I've come back to. But all those concerns pretty much end as soon as you enter the country. All those anxious moments transition with the inevitable chaos one immediately experiences, and it just goes from there. Thoughts shift to new local experiences, such as, how is it possible to fit 5 vehicles abreast on a road clearly designed for 2 lanes? Or what's the exchange rate on the money? And why it takes thousands of the local currency to just get a bottle of water? Pretty soon, though, you get into a flow, and the excitement and experience just continue. On my first mission trip, which happened to be to the Dominican Republic, our host was Pastor Pedro Carey Johnson. Pedro is best described as an ambitious man of God with faith and dreams the size of an island. Pastor Pedro first introduced us to typical life in a Dominican city because we stayed at his mission house in the small but busy town of Barona. Barona lies in a desert area close to the border with Haiti. As the trip was in the dead of summer, every day approached or exceeded 100 degrees, and the heat only relented slightly into the evening. To try and get some breeze and cool off, we all had the particular treat of sleeping on the mission house roof. We moved some mattresses up there and settled in for a good night's sleep under the clear skies and starlit night. That is, until the roosters crowed all night, the dogs barked all night, and the motor scooters scooted all night. The local bar blasted music all night. Our first morning was marked with a clear resignation that there was no way we could ever get any sleep for the rest of the week. The next day we were told we would be rebuilding a part of a local church that had been severely damaged by an earthquake. Awesome! This was a real chance to accomplish a tangible goal in only the way that a goal-driven American could appreciate. We were going to achieve something. Only my boys, who accompanied my wife and me on the trip, understood that true experiential value came from relationships, not accomplishments. Our youngest, at 13, was busily playing with other local kids and having a blast. Although they couldn't speak each other's language, he showed immediately that he liked them and discovered that they weren't that much different at all. Our oldest was 16, and he was constantly busy asking the local young adults every sort of question one could imagine, and displaying a respect-based curiosity that was magnetic. None of us could wait to get started. Pastor Pedro did a great job of getting us out to our work site. We were allowed to ride in the back of an open pickup truck that literally rode over goat trails and extremely rough segments of dirt that are called roads. The village we finally arrived at could have been mistaken for any one of the dozens that we drove by. It was very small and nearly engulfed by the seemingly continuous sugar cane fields that covered the island. Our team was tasked with tearing down a 6-inch thick concrete wall and replacing it with a new one. It should have been a piece of cake, only we didn't have any tools. Instead of any number of devices that would have completed the task in less than a day, we were handed small 6-ounce clay hammers and left to our work. We pounded and pounded until we couldn't move our arms anymore. Then was a sure sign of providence. God blessed us with a sledgehammer. Not exactly the power equipment we craved, but a step up for sure. Over the course of the week, the team tore down walls, broke up the concrete floor, formed and poured new concrete columns and walls. Despite minimal tools and mixing all the concrete by hand, we generally had a great time, sweating alongside the local residents that came out to help in every way they could. We got to really know them and develop friendships that last to this day. Their gentle smiles and acts of appreciation said more than the words that they spoke, that we couldn't fully understand. During work breaks, we gave the endless tide of children piggybacks rides that, no matter how many we offered, were not enough. Exhausted and nearly oblivious at the end of the day, we would walk the batey and smile, shake hands, and pray for as many residents as we could. Suffice it to say that none of us had ever heard another scooter or rooster at night, and we slept like babies. A single thought resonated with all of us, though. How could people with virtually nothing get up every day and survive? While Pastor Pedro oversaw a group logistics and transportation, he made sure that a young man named Antonio Feliz Gomez, or Shaggy, as everyone knows him, saw to everything else that we could have needed. Shaggy was our official translator, but quickly he became a close friend. Since he wasn't too many years older than my oldest son, we hit it off with the boys immediately, and they still remained very close. Shaggy's story began with a Dominican family struggling with not having enough to eat and too many mouths to feed. Because he was the oldest, Shaggy had to leave his family and live on the streets and in the parks from the age of 12. Like many in this poor country, Shaggy primarily begged and shined shoes as a means of existing. But as God has a plan for everyone, he bumped into Pastor Pedro and was welcomed into his mission house. There, Pedro taught Shaggy basic English and enrolled him in tourism school. Unfortunately, the money ran out and Shaggy made his way by being a Guy Friday for Pedro. He was responsible for doing whatever the pastor needed, which was essentially watching after the mission teams that regularly stayed at the mission house. Shaggy is a wonderful young man that has an incredible story. He regularly witnesses to many and dreams of being a pastor. His powerful testimony has brought many to Christ, and his love for everyone is infectious. For all of us on our trip, he made the Dominican story real. In a very tangible way, we were able to relate to life in this harsh environment. His courageous path and rags to eternal riches inspires everyone that meets him. For me personally, it took this very personal person-to-person exchange to realize that I needed to do something to help. Incredibly, short-term mission trips can also become the delivery vehicle for romance. Several years after our trip, a young woman named Denise took a short-term mission trip from Boston and met Shaggy. They ultimately fell in love, married, and Shaggy moved to America. I was extremely proud to serve as his best man at the wedding. Shaggy and Denise now reside with their young child Levi in North Carolina. While happy, they dream of moving to the Dominican Republic to pursue their goal of being full-time missionaries. And Shaggy has not given up on his personal mission of becoming a pastor in his homeland. As it happens, I am an engineer and involved in a water purification business. Our customer base is American hospitals and healthcare facilities, where we provide emergency water backup should a facility lose their municipal water supply through natural or man-made disaster. Figuring that we might not have access to clean water the entire time we were in country, I brought a portable version of the water purification system with us on the trip. You would have thought we brought gold. At a local cistern that had collected rainwater, and from every water disease one could imagine, we purified the water so the team could take very frequent water breaks. Within minutes, local women and children from the village started lining up with buckets, pots, pans, anything that could store water. We spent the entire week filling every vessel possible with safe, clean water for their use. Our kids also had a great time hosing off the local children in the same way kids in America spend hours playing with a hose in the backyard. Amazing to us was learning from Shaggy and Pedro that for many, this was their first experience with clean water. It was also the very beginning of the ministry that is the focus of this book, as well as the start of a journey that has changed the lives of hundreds of thousands of lives in the Dominican Republic and hundreds of servants in this country. This incredible and very personal experience was my pivotal moment. I was finally in a place and time where God's call to me was a scream I could no longer ignore.